Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. Today's date is August 14, 2021, and this weekend we're doing some Hanging with the Sock Dem Gang clips, in which I have pulled some clips of Social Democratic channels linked to from the Secular Talk, Kyle Kalinske YouTube channel, and then I go through, what they've put out in the last week or two, and comment and criticize some of it. So, in this video, I have taken a Humanist Report video talking about Joe Rogan. So I think, I've commented, I think David Pakman is one of the worst of this group. I think as far as this group goes, Humanist Report, there's probably the most hope for this guy. I don't know, I tend to agree with him a little bit more. His politics get a little bit wishy-washy, but from a socialist perspective, I feel like, again, there is kind of more hope for this guy than some of the others. He does not seem to be the kind of avowed anti-communist that many of them are. If he said anything to the contrary, please feel free to correct me in the comments. Anyway, we're going to be watching a video, cold, I haven't seen this before, discussing Joe Rogan. I actually plan to do another video talking about Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore, talking about the COVID vaccine, which I felt like was a very skewed video, lacking perspective. It's not necessarily that what they were saying was technically incorrect. It's that we're having a very hard time doing a proper public health response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And videos with the kind of self-centered whining that they were engaged in that video, I feel like, is highly counterproductive. And when you pair it with some of the other statements Joe Rogan has made, it adds up to not that pretty a picture. Now, Joe Rogan takes the out of, I'm a clown, why do people listen to me? Well, they do, you fucking idiot. And that's just the thing. You have like what most popular podcast on iTunes. Clearly people are listening to you. If you're not comfortable with that, step down. Otherwise, just accept that people are listening to you. Again, if you don't think you can handle it, then stop. But, or convert your show into something else. But as long as you keep going along with it, I'm assuming that you're just accepting that you have this influence and you're going to use it irresponsibly. So, whatever. All right, so let's get into the Humanist Report video discussing one aspect of Joe Rogan and the pandemic.
Throughout the course of the pandemic, Joe Rogan has essentially been a one-man misinformation machine, even going so far as to explicitly suggest that his young, impressionable viewers not get the COVID-19 vaccine that could end up saving their lives. Now, thankfully, after a lot of backlash, he walked back that comment, calling himself a moron, but after correctly identifying that he is indeed a moron, well, he still is spreading misinformation about the vaccines, downplaying the efficacy of the vaccines, bringing on crackpots to fearmonger about the side effects of the...
I just want to jump in and comment here. I agree with what Mike is saying so far. So that clip that he's showing, the Jimmy Dore's experience with vaccine side effects, that's the clip that I'm planning to do right after this one. Look at Joe Rogan in this clip. You got a guy with a 1776 shirt with like a skull. Oh, he's some badass patriot. It's just the same fucking lukewarm, rehashed right-wing bullshit. Just, now with a weed-smoking comedian. But it's the same fucking rehash of shit you've just gotten forever. The same U.S. ideology, just snazzed up a little bit. That's basically what I see here. And we'll also cover an article in which Rogan was quoted. Again, it's just, this is no different than anything else. It's just kind of your standard issue, American, self-centered, oblivious to the rest of the world, we decide our own reality kind of mindset you would get anywhere else. It's not edgy, interesting, or new. It is misinformation and propaganda. All right, continuing.
Vaccines. And now what he's doing may be the worst yet in the clip that you're about to see, because he's going out of his way to suggest that the vaccines might actually make the pandemic and the virus of COVID-19 even more harmful. And I should add that he's getting paid very handsomely to spread this misinformation during a public health crisis. So what he's going to do is try to lie to you about the science of the COVID-19 vaccines by citing other scientific studies. So we'll see what he has to say, and then I'll tell you why he's wrong.
There's legitimate articles. Jamie, I'll send this to you now. There's legitimate, because doctors have been sending me these things. And, this is neither pro nor con vaccine. This is not a judgment statement. But imperfect vaccination can enhance the transmission of highly virulent pathogens.
Right.
So this is a scientific paper from 2015 that shows that here's one important quote: vaccines that keep the host alive but still allow transmission can thus allow virulent strains to circulate in a population. So vaccines that don't kill the virus, vaccines that allow people, like this is one of the things we're finding out about what they're calling breakthrough cases.
Right.
So people who are vaccinated can still get COVID and they can still transmit COVID. This recently happened at the Comedy Store. A vaccinated comedian gave COVID to like 12 different fucking people at the Comedy Store. Some of them vaccinated, some of them not. That situation where the vaccine just kind of protects you from serious damage,
right,
but it protects you from really being like badly hospitalized or death, but doesn't stop you from getting the virus, can possibly lead to more potent viruses. So these people that are saying, oh, it's these unvaccinated people that are responsible for the variants. Well, there's actually scientific papers that point to the very sort of environment that we're creating by having so many people vaccinated with a vaccine that doesn't kill off the virus. It actually can lead to more potent viruses. Try finding that story anywhere.
You're not going to find that story anywhere, Joe, because it's not actually a story. That article that you cited but didn't read actually refers to an experiment conducted on chickens to determine if them being immunized against Marek's disease would enhance the transmissibility of that virus in particular, not COVID-19. And he misrepresented that study so bad that one of the authors of the study had to come out and publicly denounce Joe Rogan, citing his study in that mangled manner. He says, we're talking a very different virus and a very different vaccines. The details in biology really matter a lot. The chicken vaccines we worked with, the first generation vaccine, definitely reduced disease, severity, and death. But unlike the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines, the chicken vaccine didn't stop transmission at all. And this is one of the key differences between what was being studied in Reed's paper and our current situation with the global pandemic. Those vaccinated chickens just kept churning out the virus for weeks and weeks and weeks. Again, this is a key difference. It's a very different virus from SARS-2. A key issue here is transmissibility. Evolution at the moment is all happening in the unvaccinated. That's where the majority of cases are. That's the majority of transmission. Every time a virus replicates, it can mutate. So the evolution is right now occurring in the body of people who are not vaccinated. Rogan is completely wrong trying to deduce anything else. Now again, that was the author of the study that Joe Rogan cited.
I'm just going to jump in again. I think Mike's doing a good job. Joe Rogan. So, I think where did he get the study from? Because I know goddamn well Joe Rogan is not sitting up late at night going through PubMed or Medline looking at studies. Somebody gave him that and was like, here, put this on your show. This is the magic key. Rogan, not knowing a fucking thing about anything, then goes on and brags like, oh, we have the inside track. You're not going to hear that story anywhere. Yeah, you don't know what you're reading. We have covered COVID several times on this channel. One of the key issues is this virulence versus transmissibility thing. All right. Delta is more virulent. It produces more severe disease. The vaccines do a good job against that. They do also reduce viral load, so you're less likely to transmit if you are vaccinated. But you can transmit. You can. Absolutely, that is correct. This is where masks, distancing, and shutdowns come into place, which Joe Biden ran on a national mask mandate and then just didn't mention it again. Just like, he sort of ran on public option for healthcare. That was on his website. And then, predictably never mentioned it again. That's where we're at. So if the outrage is going to be anywhere, we have an answer to the virulence as in the vaccines. They cut way down on the likelihood that you're going to get a severe case that's going to land you in the hospital, even of Delta. So that's good. You know, we have a real answer there. And that's part of my response to Joe Rogan is, do you have something better? Because this is what we have right now. I don't have access to a vaccine laboratory. Does Joe Rogan? Does Joe Rogan have a solution that, oh, if only we were to listen to him? No, of course he doesn't. And he doesn't even understand the one study he did read on the subject. So that's appalling, and it's infuriating that he's just spreading misinformation this badly. So let's go back again to the emergence of the Delta strain. As far as I am aware, this came out of India. If someone is, has information to the contrary, please share it in the comments and I will check that out. But I mean, they were calling it the Indian variant for a while. India, not a country known for being terribly well vaccinated at this point. And, this isn't about that. It's just the point is that variant arose out of a situation where you didn't have lots of vaccines. You had lots of regular COVID, though, going around. And every time that genetic information gets copied, viral replication or anything, there are little errors, mutations, that result in new genetic material floating around. And sometimes it confers an advantage. So anyway, it's shockingly irresponsible. We're going to get to that in the second video. I'll let Mike continue. But yeah, I guess my point is this, not only is Joe Rogan wrong, but even if you want to say that some of his outrage is, you're sympathetic to it, he is pointing you in completely the wrong direction. Continuing.
Having to take time out of his day to explain why what Joe Rogan is saying here is completely wrong. Now, this author does address whether or not vaccines, as it relates to COVID-19, can possibly make COVID-19 down the line more dangerous. And he's speculating here because he hasn't looked at that particular vaccine and virus. But here's what he has to say. Even though variants are more likely to emerge in unvaccinated people, a variant from a vaccinated person is still possible. Either way, the answer is vaccines. If a new variant emerges, we can get second-generation vaccines, Reed accurately points out, as pharmaceutical companies are already developing boosters and second-generation vaccines. There's tons of things we can do in the future. Right now, we need to vaccinate as much as possible. He pauses. I would be delighted, I have to say, to get to the point where the vast majority of the evolution that's going on is in vaccinated people because there's only vaccinated people around. If we get to that position in a year or something, we can keep a very good eye out on what evolution is happening. But right now, the problem is the unvaccinated. I'm going to read that last sentence again. But right now, the problem is the unvaccinated. Do you hear that, Joe Rogan? This is the author of the study that you cited on your program and misrepresented. Because one, you probably didn't read it. And two, even if you did read it, you wouldn't understand the implications of said study because you have absolutely no knowledge of this particular field. And you citing that study and using it to spread misinformation about the COVID-19 vaccines is dangerous, and that's what the author also calls out. He says, the study was tweeted 1,000 times last night, according to our metrics, says Reed. I had a physician in England reach out to me on Friday asking me to clarify because his patients are using my paper to argue against vaccination. Calling into question the effectiveness of vaccines was never the intention of his 2015 study. I am genuinely shocked. I've been doing work for 20 years now on how vaccines might drive the evolution of viruses. There's nothing in any of that 20 years work that argues in favor of withholding life-saving vaccines. It's just shocking to me. He adds, there are 600,000 Americans dead so far. The vast majority of those deaths are vaccine preventable. There's not a single scenario that would argue in favor of not using vaccines to save the next 100,000. Not one scenario. What really gets me, apart from the fact that I do think this is a public health threat that people who who are arguing against vaccinations are doing other people great harm. Apart from that, I really get concerned that this sort of disinformation or this inappropriate interpretation means that it's very difficult for us scientists to actually ask serious questions about how evolution might proceed and get a good look at it, because we get this concern that our work will be taken and twisted. Those of us who are very interested in the way the evolution might go have trouble doing the work, or at least talking about it, because of the concern that people like Joe Rogan will twist it and use it in the wrong way. And in this instance, use it to spread misinformation about the COVID-19 vaccines that are life-saving. Not only are they safe, but they're effective. But Joe Rogan doesn't care. He just wants to push his anti-vax agenda, because that's what his podcast is now. Spreading misinformation about vaccines and a virus during a public health crisis. And he also was condemning people for wearing masks. He's against the lockdowns, and he's also against vaccines. So at some point, Joe Rogan has to ask himself, is he just on the side of the virus at this point? Because all of this misinformation that you're peddling is going to lead to people dying. How many people who listen to your podcast chose to not get vaccinated because of you and are going to die? Are you going to pay for the funeral expenses or the healthcare costs, Joe Rogan, with some of that $100 million that you make to spread this bullshit from that Spotify deal that you signed? Like, are you going to help the people you're actively harming right now, Joe Rogan?
Yeah, so in my opinion, I mean, I've let this clip run for a while. Mike's getting this one right. Go back and watch S4A's COVID coverage. This is a disaster. So much of it is preventable. And a lot of it, you know, between the Democrats not doing mask mandates and shutdowns and things, and then the Republicans being against the vaccines, you have issues on both sides, transmissibility and virulence. So it's like, I don't know, do capitalists want this thing to spread? Like, in the beginning, you could see it like, oh, everybody just goes back to work. Now the curve is like dramatically climbing, and kids are winding up in the ICU. Like, I can't help but, you know, think this is going to wind up backfiring, this whole strategy. I know that the economy, like, probably can't, you know, stand another shutdown or anything, which is, we're getting to the point where that's going to be needed again, because we're in mid-August and the curve is like at, you know, last November levels. It's really bad. But anyway, people like Joe Rogan out there claiming that, you know, oh, we're, you know, the last bastion of free thought. No, you're not. You don't even know what you're talking about. You know, I read somewhere that people who claim to be independent thinkers are just too stupid to know where they got their ideas from. Because, you know, and whether that's true 100% of the time, I like to think I've had, you know, maybe an original thought or, you know, a couple of independent trains of thought in which I've, you know, truly reached my own conclusions and, you know, nobody else is thinking about it. Whatever. This is, you know, vanity. But the point remains, we're bombarded by impressions. We're bombarded by suggestions. We are bombarded by manipulation and influence, attempts to influence us constantly. So, yeah, anyway, having this, you know, gigantic, like, we're for free speech and free thought and whatever. No, I mean, honestly, when you boil it down, usually they're just recycling right-wing garbage that they're just, you know, reframing as like the new martyrs. But it's the same ideology that's dominated everything for a long time. Again, going back to that, you know, 1776 skull and crossbones, or, you know, skull and cross guns shirt he was wearing. It's just recycled bullshit, you know. Anyway, back to the video.
I don't think so. So you were correct when you said that you're a moron. So if you acknowledge that you're a moron and you're out of your league here, shut the fuck up when it comes to the virus and COVID-19 vaccines, because you're spreading misinformation that is deadly, Joe Rogan. Stay in your lane. Shut the fuck up, idiot.
Okay, and the circle closes. That's pretty much what I opened the video with. So, yeah, I think we're on the same wavelength. That delivery was, you know, a little over the top. But anyway, no, I agree wholeheartedly with the message. But, you know, this is where the money's at. And, you know, leading up to the next video with Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore is somebody I definitely think is guilty of going where the money is and pandering to a more right-wing audience and all this, oh, we're the free speech martyrs and all this stuff. Jimmy Dore doesn't have 100% bad positions. He says some things that are okay. He's no socialist, though, so get that out of your head. And again, there's so much of this other stuff mixed in that, to me, I just don't even go there. But we are about to criticize it and go there. Anyway, good job to Humanist Report on this one. Can somebody let me know in the comments, like, how close is this guy to becoming like a Marxist? Because that would be helpful, honestly. From listening to him, he seems like he's still kind of pretty tied up in the Democratic Party. I feel like if he could be influenced out of that somehow, then again, maybe I'm misreading this. Maybe I'm, giving this guy too much credit. Anyway, we'll close it there. Thanks to the Humanist Report. Again, I didn't really disagree, at least strongly, with really anything in there. Thanks for watching. Thanks to the current patrons whose names are on the screen. If you'd like to get your name on the screen, head to patreon.com/socialismforall. You can sign up for as little as $2 a month. If that's not your thing, understandable, bad economy. You can like, share, subscribe, and comment. That helps out the channel, helps more people to see this content, and helps to expand the conversation around socialism, which needs to happen in the collapsing U.S. economy, which is just suffering one crisis after another. And we need to mobilize to end this and institute a new socialist system. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for whatever you are doing out there to spread socialism in the world, agitate, educate, and organize. And we'll catch you in the next video.